On this channel, I often share this montage of home video I have of me on sports day. I don't even know, why was this recorded as if it was like a great moment in my history? I don't know, Mum. Please answer that. But it's been useful to me now, and it's funny to look back on. So basically, I was just absolutely appalling at doing sports. Teachers have to keep coming in, stepping in to try and help me, and I'm clearly quite embarrassed sometimes, and I kind of push back and say like, no, I just want to do it on my own. I don't want your help. It is funny to look back at now, and I do enjoy laughing at it, but I do remember how absolutely horrendously embarrassing, devastatingly embarrassing it was at the time, and how frustrated I felt with myself and why I couldn't get my body to do things that just looked like they were so easy for other people, and I felt like I was trying really hard, and everyone else around me is just like, well, just try, and I'm like, but I am trying. This is me trying. It might not look like it. It really might not look like it, but it is. It's funny to me now because I know that I had dyspraxia. If I didn't know that at this point, it probably still wouldn't be that funny to me now. It would probably be pretty painful to watch now, but the knowledge that I actually had a neurodevelopmental condition that was making it harder for me to move is such a relief. I'm not just an idiot, because apparently being able to move your body is linked to your intellect somehow. I don't know. So today we're going to talk traits of dyspraxia, sometimes called Developmental Co-ordination Disorder. Dyspraxia commonly co-occurs with other neurodevelopmental conditions. You can just have dyspraxia on its own. And there's also a lot of crossover between them, and the lines between them kind of blur sometimes, and it's tricky to see where one ends and another begins. I think it's kind of important to remember you're just one person, you're just one brain, and you're using these very helpful, useful words to try to best describe and explain your brain, but at the end of the day, like, it's not segmented into like, this is the dyspraxia area of my brain, we've got the ADHD back here, and then the autism kind of, you know, filling in all the gaps there. So if you have dyspraxia, you may also be autistic, you may be an ADHD, you may have dyslexia or dyscalculia. Those oftentimes come together with dyspraxia too. It can be kind of confusing with autism because moving your body a bit differently, because you may have issues with your sense of proprioception, your sense of your own body in space, can kind of make it complicated. Like, why do you need a separate diagnosis of dyspraxia? And I suppose maybe you don't. Maybe it's enough for you to get the accommodations you need to say that I'm autistic and therefore I have sensory differences, and one of them is my sense of proprioception. For me, I was just given the dyspraxia diagnosis at the same time, so I was like, fine, I'll take it. I don't know whether I would have sought out a dyspraxia diagnosis on its own, but as a child it might have been really helpful. Sometimes it would be easier to say, look, I have dyspraxia. It's a good way of communicating that difference that I had, and that there was a real reason behind that difference that wasn't my fault. So let's talk about the traits of dyspraxia and see maybe if that would be a diagnosis that you might fit, if you should wish to get an official diagnosis, or whether you just want to self-diagnose and carry on going about your day. Number one, who would have guessed it from the name? You could have some issues with your coordination. So you may have been pretty terrible at PE, and it may have been a pretty traumatizing experience for you, and you may have been kind of ostracized because of it and made to feel like an idiot because of it. This is a very sore spot for me. Oh. You might not be good at catching a ball. People got really angry with me and would act like I was doing things deliberately. You know, you have to do a lot of team games, netball in particular. I feel like, oh, there was some wrath from the other girls in the netball team, because of course you can only do netball if you're a girl, and people would throw a ball and I wouldn't be able to catch it. They'd stare at me with their dagger eyes, and I always used to think, you wouldn't get this annoyed with someone who didn't try in maths. Like, why is it such a big deal? People got so competitive about it, and it was just really overwhelming and hard to deal with, and I much preferred when we did more individual sports. I don't know why PE has to be so focused on group sports. I think that can be really horrible. Maybe there should be a choice. I know some people enjoy those team games. Surely PE should be about teaching us how to exercise more than anything else. I think a lot of people with a dyspraxia diagnosis probably get put off exercising in the future and maybe become unfit later on in life. I've taken to weightlifting, which I found super difficult to kind of get the correct form at first, but I just pushed through, kept trying, got a lot of help and support. My stepdad is super into it, so he was like showing me how to do things, and he would get frustrated with me and sometimes and be kind of like, what, why can't you do that? Like, come on, just move your body. But he's very patient, and yeah, now I can do it. Now it's fine. I know the movements. I do them every day, or every day that I bother to exercise. And it's a very nice individual thing to do. Number 2, you might have issues with balance, and therefore you may struggle with riding a bike. Now, I did ballet and I was actually quite good at ballet. I'm not sure if that's just because I loved it, because I found it so stimulating because of being an autistic person, and therefore I just practiced a lot. I don't know what it is, or maybe my balance was worse than everybody else's. I really don't know. I got used to, just like staring at a fixed spot on the wall. If I don't stare at a fixed spot, then I will fall. But riding a bike for me was a traumatic experience. It was very, very difficult, to the point where I learned to ride a bike because my dad thought that I should and was kind of, pushing me towards doing it. So I was like, whatever. And I probably, part of me, I'm quite a determined person. I was probably like, yeah, I want to learn to ride a bike. That's something that everybody does. That's something I should do. And then I never rode a bike again from the time that I learned. Once I ticked off the skill, I was like, phew, I'm done. And then I also started doing figure skating because I really liked, is it called Ice Princess, that Disney film? I used to watch that film over and over again, and I was just hopeless at it, and it was so upsetting to me because I had to do like little tests to move up to the next level, that they just assess you doing a few skills, and I'd often have to do each kind of step, each level numerous times because I just wasn't very good at it. I didn't have any natural ability, which I was really sad about, because I thought, oh, figure skating's, it's really pretty, but it really was one of those things where you're like, this is not made for me at all. Which brings on to number 3, that it may take you longer to learn how to do movements, and for other people you might have to practice them more. And I think a lot of people don't understand this, can't relate to this, and therefore don't have patience with you. You need people to have patience with you, and I wish I could have been able to say, as a younger person, I have dyspraxia, it's going to take me longer to pick up the skill. Doesn't mean I won't be able to do it, and I'm not doing things deliberately badly or not putting effort in or being lazy. It is actually hard for me to do these things. I still don't know how much people would understand, but I think it would be a step. It would be helpful. When I was getting my diagnosis, my mom was talking about how I learned to ice skate at these ice skating lessons, but then when we went ice skating as a family, I couldn't ice skate anymore and clung to the side the whole time, even though I had been through multiple levels of learning to do figure skating basics and earn like badges and stuff, only maybe a year or so before. And she was like, I couldn't understand why she couldn't do it. Even then, I think she still felt a little bit like it was deliberate, or I'd just been having like some kind of tantrum that day or whatever. But then the guy said, who was doing my diagnosis, oh no, people with dyspraxia can forget how to do skills that they have learned if they kind of don't maintain them. And it always makes me laugh how it's like riding a bike, you never forget. I could not ride a bike now. You may have issues with fine motor skills, so your handwriting might be a pile of rubbish, which mine most certainly was and is. My husband's is very similar to mine. Strangely, we've got very similar handwriting. I don't know what that means. Does anyone do handwriting analysis? We both got very like small spidery handwriting. I actually intentionally made my handwriting very small. It used to be very big, and then I thought it's just ugly, so if I make it small, there's less of it, like it takes up less space, it's less in people's face. I felt like it looked neater when I did that. Even though me and my husband have similar handwriting now, when I look at his old school books versus mine, it just looks kind of scruffy. And I remember a teacher saying when I was in year 10, so the second to last year of high school in the UK, telling me that I didn't have an A-star book. So A-star used to be the best grade that you could get at GCSEs at the end of high school, and I found it really insulting at the time because I was like, my handwriting is rubbish, I know that. I know I can't draw. Another thing, I can't do diagrams very well. Was terrible at geometry, all that kind of stuff. But I know I'm not stupid, and I know that the exam doesn't require me to be able to present this beautiful book with highlighter pens. And loads of people are obsessed with like stationery, and I don't mind getting a nice new notebook, but I've never got it. I've never got, having fancy pens and all this stuff, because it's just going to look rubbish. There's no point in me having a fancy diary or a bullet journal or something like that. I use computers to make things look nice, and I much prefer doing that. I'm so grateful. Don't know how I would have coped without computers. It would have been amazing if I could have had a laptop in school or something to type instead, because I can type a lot faster than I can write by hand. I feel like I get fatigued writing by hand. Imagine doing that in exams as well. That would have been amazing. And I know that that's an accommodation that some people do ask for. That would have been brilliant. And if you are dyspraxic and you are at school, maybe that's something that you could consider requesting. Even just autistic, if you just feel like you have a little bit of a problem with motor skills, maybe consider doing that. Other fine motor skills, tying shoelaces, I would think I was a bit slower to do that. Tying up my own hair, my mom helped me with my hair for quite a long time until I was quite old, probably about 14. There was a time where she tried to get me to tie up my own hair for a while when I was in primary school. Obviously, I'm PDA and autistic, but I would have a meltdown nearly every morning because I just couldn't do it. It wasn't just that it was a demand and that there was pressure to tie my hair up. It was also that I couldn't do it. I made these horrible, low, kind of like lumpy ponytails. I remember going to a friend's house and tying up my hair in the morning there, and she was like, oh, you can't go out like that, you know, and that was how I was tying my hair up every day for school. Also dressing my dolls, my mom would help me, particularly with smaller dolls, with like Barbie dolls and things like that. She would help me with changing the outfits because I couldn't really do that. Luckily, my mom was just really kind of just accepted that, like, you know, that's just not your skill set. They didn't really ever question it or try to pathologize it in any way. And this is the thing, sometimes your parents love you so much and that's why you don't get diagnosed, you know? I suppose because these things are stigmatized and they don't want to stigmatize you. Hopefully if we can change the stigma around neurodivergence, then that won't be so much of a thing anymore, and it won't be like a dirty word to be like, oh, my child has dyspraxia, you know? Locks were really hard for me, unlocking and locking doors. I remember my driving teacher dropping me off. He wasn't a very nice guy. I ended up firing him as my driving teacher, but he was my driving teacher for a time, and he dropped me off and I went to the door and I had to unlock the door because my parents were there and I had the keys and I just couldn't do it. And I think in the end he had to come out and help me, and I think because he was watching me from the car and he didn't just drive away, it was just worse. Maybe I would have been able to do it if he hadn't been there. And I was just so embarrassed. I just wanted to cry. He really didn't like me. He didn't get me at all, and I think he came out in like frustration and helped me with the door. Some of the most embarrassing moments of my life are to do with problems with my coordination and motor stuff, which I think is why a dyspraxia diagnosis made so much sense to me. Using scissors as well. I remember feeling really proud of myself. I was probably about 7 years old for how I'd cut something out because I usually struggled with it, and thinking in my head it looked really perfect. It looked really great, which is strange because I'm usually very critical of myself. And then the teacher kind of scolded me and was like, that's a mess, Megan, what have you done there? I wish I could see what it looked like now. I don't have it anymore. It was supposed to be something that was going up on the wall, and I don't know, in my head it was good. It was probably good relative to what I usually did, and I felt like I'd particularly put a lot of effort into it. Children may not really want to use Lego and not want to play with jigsaw puzzles. I definitely didn't play with either of those things. In general, my play was always quite imaginative and more in my head, and I would kind of flap my hands and stim, and that would be kind of how I would play. I didn't really like any sort of, you know, construction toys were not my kind of thing at all. And you also may dislike colouring and drawing. My mum is an artist and she's absolutely incredible. And then I'm there and I can't draw a stick person, and I found drawing really difficult. Sometimes I'd occasionally do something I was quite happy with, and she taught me a lot of techniques, and she actually did help me to do all right in art. Yeah, I naturally didn't have any ability and I was very inconsistent with my drawing, and now I really can't draw at all. 5, you may be clumsy, and the NHS page for dyspraxia kind of has a note that a lot of children can be clumsy and it might not be anything to do with dyspraxia, but it might be. I dropped my phone 3 times, I think it was, during my assessment, and that I think very much contributed to me getting that diagnosis. I wouldn't really have called myself a clumsy person, particularly growing up. I think people would sometimes see my movements as a bit jerky and strange, and people would kind of mock them a little bit and look bemused sometimes. Even in ballet lessons, I sometimes have ballet teachers kind of imitate what I'd done a little bit, but I wouldn't see myself as a clumsy person. But then when I think about it now, there's a lot of reasons why I like order and like things to be neat and tidy in my space. One of the reasons is I will trip over things and stub my toe and stuff like that. Number 6, you might struggle with using stairs. I hear this come up quite a lot. I personally don't know if I ever really did, but I do still tend to prefer to run up and down stairs and on my toes. I don't know if that's to do with being autistic or if for some reason that helps my proprioception. Sometimes I run down the stairs in a funny way to pick up my parcel or something, and the postman will see me through the door and kind of laugh at how I've moved. So I feel like I have to be careful about how I go down the last flight of stairs in case the postman's gonna analyze my movements. So I don't know, I do stairs weirdly, that's all I can say. Number 7, you might struggle to keep still. So if you have an ADHD or autism diagnosis, then this is where the lines get a bit blurred. It could link into that because we like to fidget and stim a lot, but if you look at home videos of me, there are many times where I swing my arms a lot as I'm walking, and I think that's to kind of help me to move. So maybe you do that as well. Number 8, you may find that your grip is too tight or too weak and kind of have difficulties regulating your strength. So if somebody says to me pull on that really hard, I'll feel like I'm pulling really hard, so hard that I worry that I could break something, and nothing's happening. I always struggled with opening bottles. Usually my friends would do them for me. They'd just be like, just do it straight away. Now I can do it. I can open bottles and cans. I used to open cans using a knife, like wedging it underneath it and pulling it up. I still can't really open tins of beans and stuff like that very easily. If people are watching me, I definitely can't do things like that. In general, I just always thought I was a pretty weak person. I have found that doing weightlifting has helped me for sure. But sometimes I don't think it's to do with the actual level of strength I have. It's just I don't think I can regulate how much force I'm putting into doing something very well. And I don't think I've ever won pulling a cracker. I hate pulling crackers. I hate it so much because obviously there's a big bang as well. There's just nothing pleasant about them. They're wasteful. They come with little stupid prizes that you're never going to see again. I don't get the point of them. The whole pulling them and everyone's staring at you. If I'm doing, multiple times, I'm going to lose every time. And then it's like, man, go on, just pull a bit harder. Number 9, you may struggle with your spatial awareness. So you may kind of find yourself leaning towards people when you don't mean to. I hate on a train, when you have to go through aisles and, try not to bump into anybody. They're very narrow as it is. I don't know how neurotypical people or people who don't fit a dyspraxia diagnosis would feel about that, but I don't know, I just find it really, really unpleasant, particularly if I've got stuff to carry and I have to make sure I'm not whacking someone in the face. I feel like I find it harder to maneuver myself through that space. In general, I just don't have very good spatial awareness. Like if you had to ask me to pack things into a box in the best way to use the space, I'm rubbish at doing that. I'm rubbish at judging distance and stuff like that. Number 10, you may feel like you have to very consciously control your body at all times and really, really think about little movements that you make. Gosh, I can't keep control of my legs. I'm gonna trip over and then that's gonna make a hilarious video. And this can be part of masking your dyspraxia. I have a video about masking autism, but you can mask any type of neurodivergence. And a lot of the time when I've been masking autism, I've also been masking dyspraxia, I see now. A lot of what I think about when I'm talking to someone, as well as, facial expression, tone, what I'm saying, all that stuff you have to juggle. It's also about my body and what is my body doing and where are my limbs and where should I put them, and just feeling like I'm aware of every little segment of myself and how do I make it flow. I've never felt like my movements flow. Other people seem to flow. I look back at myself on videos and I'm like, what are you doing? Why? Why is it like that? A lot of the time, like I say, people have had kind of bemused reactions to the way that I move and it's been brought up a lot, and therefore you adapt and you try and pick up coping skills. And for me, it's, if I'm making a cup of tea and somebody is watching me, I hate people watching me do anything. I will be like, okay, move your arm normally, like a normal person. I would just constantly have an internal monologue about how to move my body like a normal person. And sometimes I feel like I'm trying to control a robot who doesn't really want to do what I'm trying to say. Like there's a strong disconnect between my brain and then what my body actually does. Number 11, it can also affect your speech, which I didn't know, and I didn't personally, as far as I know and as far as I remember, I don't personally think my speech was affected in any way, but obviously, you have to move to speak, you have to move your mouth. I don't think I had any sort of speech delay or any problems. I didn't have to have any speech therapy or anything like that, but it may be something that you struggled with, and I know a lot of autistic people do as well. And finally, you may have issues with your executive function, which is your ability to organize, plan, and then follow through on things. This could affect your memory, your attention, your navigation skills. And people with dyspraxia can also have sensory issues as well. If you feel like your sensory issues are having a big impact on your life, I'd perhaps consider looking into autism, because there's a lot of crossover between all of these things, and maybe you do need more supports in other areas of your life. Whenever I hear about someone who, they have a dyspraxia diagnosis and they have 3 children who are autistic, I'm like, beep, 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 particularly if it's a woman, I'm like, But obviously it is totally possible for you to only fit a dyspraxia diagnosis and have autistic children, of course. I hope this was helpful for you. If you want to know a little bit more about autism, which is largely what I speak about on this channel, then I have 3 videos about traits of autism. It's called Traits of Autism in Women, but they apply to anyone of any gender. It's not really that simple and black and white, but women are underdiagnosed, so I kind of wanted to target women when I was making that video. And then I also have a video about the pathological demand avoidance profile of autism. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
It's coming back, oh no!